In this part of our HVAC schematics series, what we're going to do is take the motor diagrams that we started working with in the last part, remembering we have a couple different motor types, a shaded pole, a split phase, a PSC, a capacitor start induction run or CSIR, and finally our CSCR. Okay, we also talked about a couple different start relays. We have a potential relay, a current coil relay, and we have some capacitors, and we have a centrifugal switch. And we have a cooling thermostat that we've talked about. So what we're going to start doing is we're going to take all these components and start building actual circuits and components and systems that do work. A system, any HVAC system, is just a bunch of components put together to do something. Our ladder schematic allows us to see these components and understand the sequence of operation. A pictorial shows you where they're at and how they're wired. But the ladder schematic shows you the sequence of operation, which from a troubleshooting perspective, that is the most important part of the process. So the next ladder schematic we're going to do is a schematic of a shaded pole motor and a PSC motor. Okay, the shaded pole motor runs constantly when the circuit is energized via a single pole breaker. By the way, the single pole breaker tells us this is a 120 volt circuit, because anything over 120 volt circuit has a line 1 and a line 2 or more lines and requires double pole or triple pole breakers. So in this case, we have a single pole breaker that tells it's 120 volts. The PSC motor cycles on and off based on a close-on-rise line voltage thermostat. So what it's telling us, this is all one circuit. There's no low voltage. The key word is line voltage thermostat. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off as we always do in this, okay? And I'm going to draw in my line. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in my circuit breaker, and I'm going to draw in my neutral, which becomes important in all circuits. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and, while I'm here, label everything. I'm going to label line. I'm going to label my breaker. I'm going to label neutral. And then I'm going to label 120 volts. Okay, so that is the start of it. Now, if you did this right, what you have done is you have your schematic from the part 5, okay, where we have all our diagrams, or you've created a separate symbol sheet. So, the first thing we need to do, based on what we have a shaded pole motor that runs constantly when the circuit is energized. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and, since I have a shaded pole motor that I sort of like the look of, I'm going to go ahead and grab my shaded pole motor. Okay, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to move it to where I can, I'm just going to probably center this sucker. Okay, now constantly means it's wired line to line. So let's just go ahead and take care of that while we're at it. We're going to wire that into line after the breaker, and I'm going to come in and wire this to neutral after the breaker. So here's my shaded pole motor. I am going to call this EFM. There's a reason I'm going to call this EFM, and that is because in cooling systems, in commercial refrigeration, the most frequent motor that runs constantly and is shaded pole is my evaporator fan motor. So I might just well get in the habit of calling it evaporator fan motor. Okay, then I have a PSC motor that is cycles on and off based on a cooling, which is a close-on-rise, line voltage thermostat. So let's go ahead back to my parts schematic. Okay, I'm going to grab and highlight this cooling thermostat. I'm going to copy that. Okay, I'm going to come over to this schematic. I'm going to throw my cooling thermostat in. Might as well just put it right there on the line. Okay. And then I'm going to grab my PSC motor that I spent quite a lot of time drawing. I'm going to copy that. Okay, I'm going to put that in there. And I'm going to go ahead and draw in my connections. Okay, I'm going to label. Oh, actually, let's just call this CS for cooling thermostat. We'll call this, I'll just label PSC. Okay, so what we have here is I have my shaded pole motor, shaded pole, one winding, goes after the breaker between line and neutral. So that leg of the circuit, or that rung of the circuit, runs constantly. Then I have my cooling thermostat, close on temperature rise, that energizes my PSC motor with my run cap, run, common, and start, which connects, the common connects into neutral. So this leg will only work when this thermostat is calling for cooling. So we've met the requirement of my schematic. And this is now a very easy picture to see on how to wire and what happens when that thermostat calls for cooling and that breaker closes. So from a sequence of operation, how things work, this is how the circuit looks.